And Alejandro's team of that Calyrex Ice Rider, Indeedee, Hatterene, Smeargle, Gallade, and Torkoal. All of these Pokemon are known for excelling in Trick Room, but there are little tricks that Alejandro put in the team to give him an advantage, especially Imprison on that Calyrex Ice Rider, able to shut down opposing Calyrex Ice Rider and opposing Trick Room users. Strategies we've seen him use already this weekend.
Yeah, we've seen him be very impactful over the course of these matches, even when he's not choosing to have the Calyrex use Imprison. The threat of it really changes how the opponent plays, what Pokemon they're able to bring. We've seen that Smeargle lead for him very frequently, which has also kind of limited the opponent's options. We haven't been able to see a whole lot of lead variety against him. I think he has a really strong strategy that his opponents have struggled to adapt to.
For sure, and you know, with 4 Trick Room users as well on this team, we haven't seen him play some of these B or maybe even C modes just yet. But you know, looking at Behzad's team, looking at his opponent's approach to this matchup, Lunala has Trick Room on that team, Indeedee has Trick Room on that team. It's possible that because of the presence of those 2 Psychic-type Pokemon, Alejandro's gonna have to mix things up.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I think one thing that this team kind of has in common with Alejandro's last opponent is there are a whole lot of Pokemon that are going to take attacks from Calyrex super well. So if he does get set up and get rolling, it's going to be difficult to survive that Trick Room. And then, as we mentioned, the Imprison makes just flipping it a lot harder. You know, there are 2 bulkier Pokemon on this team that can use Trick Room, theoretically, but you know, previously when we've seen Alejandro in stream, his opponents have not been able to change Trick Room back around and disable it by using it in extra time.
Behzad Muntazir's team has taken inspiration from Justin and Shiliang Tang's approach to the San Antonio Regional Championships with that Hearthflame Mask, Ogerpon, Landorus Incarnate, Urshifu Rapid Strike, and Roaring Moon, but swapping out the Amoonguss and the Calyrex Ice Rider for Indeedee and Lunala. 2 Pokemon that he said were predictions for this weekend. Those 2 Pokemon were the metagame call.
Yeah, it's doing very well for him so far. I gotta say, I feel like if there's Calyrex, then Lunala spot, I'm kind of, maybe you start getting that trophy, give it to Alejandro now, where it just seems like he's so powerful in that matchup. I think with Lunala instead, this is a much more interesting matchup. I do think it's going to be very interesting to see what Pokemon he chooses to lead and what Pokemon he chooses to bring. We saw in Alejandro's last game, the Ogerpon at least did a little bit better in the lead, so maybe we'll see him try that as well. But it's going to be a tricky spot here. I think it's going to be, again, important not to allow too much momentum. We've previously seen Alejandro's opponents not be able to bring that Landorus because, does not do super well against the Calyrex, nor does it do super well in Trick Room in general. So, again, this may be a strategy with limiting his options. I'll have to see. Maybe he'll figure out the secret sauce to come up with a victory in this one.
Well, with a deep breath from both trainers, we get started with game number 1 of the finals. It's Lunala and the Urshifu Rapid Strike on the field for Behzad versus Alejandro, Smeargle, and Calyrex Ice Rider. Once again, sticking with that same lead.
So I think this is a little different approach than we've seen in Alejandro's other game. This is some much more aggressive offense on the other side of the field here, where maybe Urshifu going to try to just push through this Smeargle and get damage in Calyrex right from turn 1.
For sure, and the interesting thing as well is that the Lunala, yes, it could go on the offense. It's holding that Power Herb item along with Meteor Beam, which will boost its special attack up by 1 stage before attacking. Could also just try and reverse Trick Room. There's a lot of mind games on the field.
Yeah, there's also the option of Taunt, right?
Yeah.
A Taunt Trick Room start would be very passive, but potentially very devastating. So lots of fun options here with the techs that these trainers have chosen for their Pokemon.
Interestingly enough, Alejandro once again locking into that Fairy-type Terrestrialization on his Calyrex Ice Rider. Doesn't have to worry about any super effective Meteor Beams or possibly big attacks from this Urshifu, because you also have the Smeargle redirecting any attacks away, including the taunt from the opposing Urshifu. So Smeargle now will not be able to do much of anything in the future. Does take an Expanding Force from the Lunala, doesn't activate the Focus Sash, and Calyrex Ice Rider sets up Trick Room.
So we do see the situation once again where Smeargle is taunted, not going to be able to do a lot here, so it kind of forces the switch. So now on the other side of the field, you get at least one action to try to take advantage of that, where that Pokemon can't move. Do you switch against it and try to find your own way to keep an advantage on the field, or maybe you try to double into this Calyrex and try to pick up some damage there. Again, one of the weaknesses of this Imprison set, there's no Protect, so it's not going to be able to defend itself.
For sure, and you also know that the Smeargle is probably going to either, accept being KO'd this turn or switch out this turn, and Alejandro seems to be following the same playbook that we've seen from him in top 8, in top 4. Does reveal Torkoal for the first time here this weekend in Vancouver on stream, and with it will activate the Drought ability to set up the Sunlight and weaken any potential water-type attacks from that Urshifu. Behzad now goes for Terastallization on the Lunala into the water typing, so it will resist any Glacial Lances from Calyrex.
As well as Torkoal's attack, so kind of getting one step ahead there.
Yeah, 2 water types in front of a Torkoal is the best positioning you can have. Calyrex does go for an Imprison, so while it's unable to do damage this turn, it will stop Behzad from re-twisting the dimensions back to normal. 3 Surging Strikes hits into that Torkoal will bring it down to just above half of its health, and let's see if Lunala went for that Trick Room. We're gonna have to wait a moment. It can't use it, so a great call there from Alejandro.
Kind of as you mentioned, we're seeing these same lines over and over from him. It seems to work, right? No one's been able to break through this strategy. I think one of the great things about Alejandro's team is not only are these supportive Pokemon able to provide damage of their own, but all of them have some sort of field utility, right? We saw the Magic Bounce previously, and now the Drought paying dividends.
For sure. Urshifu now out of the field, and in comes Indeedee. So we'll take a moment to set up the Psychic Terrain, which will ensure that any expanding forces moving forward are now spread attacks. Weather Ball and Torkoal is going to be a Fire-type attack into the Water-type Lunala, not very effective. Glacial Lance, again, not going to be very effective against the Lunala, but at least its Shadow Shield ability was broken by the previous attack. And now this Expanding Force will do enough damage to knock out the Torkoal and bring that Calyrex down.
Some big damage getting dealt there, and you know, we see kind of a difference between this Lunala and some other restricted Pokemon we've seen. I guess, you know, it helps that it has the great type advantage with this water-type Terastallization, but boy, is it healthy after being hit twice compared to some of the restricted Pokemon of Alejandro's previous opponents.
And Alejandro also changing the script once again with Hatterene as that final Pokemon. Previously, we've seen him bring 2 Follow Me users. This time it was just the Smeargle.
Yeah, and there is a Follow Me user on the other side, right? Where, unfortunately, a bunch of sprint damage likely to head the other direction, so Indeedee not looking super effective here, and once again, another restricted Pokemon that doesn't know Protect, so going to have to try to get through Trick Room without help from it.
For sure. Behzad taking a moment to think through this turn. It's worth calling out that Indeedee, it can't use Trick Room because of the Imprison. As long as the Pokemon that used Imprison is on the field, that's still going to be active, but can go for Follow Me. Could have also tried to go for a Helping Hand to boost up Lunala's attacks, but it's not going to have the opportunity to do that, as an Expanding Force is all Lunala needs to be taken down by the Hatterene. Of course, Hatterene will lose some health from its Life Orb, but a Calyrex Ice Rider is right in the back, able to deal that little bit of extra damage to pick up the KO on the Indeedee now. So Behzad down to his final 2 Pokemon, and an end to Trick Room is nowhere in sight.
Yeah, nice little failure to get that knockout too from the Hatterene, proving to be a great teammate in that play by leaving it for Calyrex to pick up that chilling Nay boost. And once again, Alejandro's looking really good here. No one seems to be able to break through this core. It's been a very straightforward but very effective strategy, and this seems like the highest damage mode. You know, Torkoal not able to deal as much damage maybe as it could have otherwise since it got damaged on the switch in, but still pushing a ton of damage. Just Hatterene and Psychic Terrain doing tons of damage. Critically, it's the opponent's Psychic Terrain that's actually powering this Pokemon up.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I think that Alejandro made a great call in Team Preview to bring the Hatterene without his own Indeedee for that reason.
Yeah, I mean, it's looking really good here. And now, again, just a tough spot where these Pokemon both going to be able to potentially deal powerful spread attacks, but instead, Smeargle going to make it out in the field. Finally removing that Imprison now, but it doesn't matter. Finally
removing the Imprison, but interestingly enough, switching out the Calyrex Ice Rider that did still have a speed advantage, but Expanding Force does so much damage. The Ogerpon and the Urshifu are able to hold on, but can they find a knockout in return? Ivy Cudgel does manage to connect with the Hatterene, gets a critical hit for the KO there. That's 1 Pokemon down for Alejandro. Here comes that Urshifu now. Surging Strikes will certainly pick up the KO on Smeargle.
So suddenly getting interesting here, right? The sun's still shining brightly, which Ogerpon is all over. And hey, you know, unlike many of the other Pokemon we've seen, both these Pokemon are capable of using Protect moves. Neither of them actually know Protect. It's Detect on one and Spiky Shield on the other. But hey, it doesn't really matter anyway because there's no more Trick Room to stall out. It expires there, and all of a sudden, this game that looked so great for Alejandro, Calyrex is going to need to be able to survive for 2, maybe 3 more attacks. I guess 2 if we get the Trick Room up, or I guess just fire off the Glacial Glacial Lance don't really need it, but two powerful Pokemon facing it down. I don't know if it's going to be able to.
I don't know either. I mean, on the one hand, you are that fairy type now, so you'll be able to take this damage comfortably, but at the same time, the Sun is going to be boosting the damage from an Ivy Cudgel on Behzad's Ogerpon. Of course, has that higher critical hit rate as well, but it doesn't need a critical hit to pick up that KO. And Behzad is able to power through the Trick Room and win game one of this final set.
I'm a little puzzled by the way that game ended out. It seemed like if there'd just been a Glacial Lance instead of a switch there, that might have been a clean ending. Instead, Behzad taking the advantage here and perhaps a big mental edge as well going into the second game.
For sure. I mean, you have to think about what the board position would have been like if we saw the Spiky Shield and the D-Tech from that Urshifu in that final turn of Trick Room. I feel like if you switch the Calyrex Ice Rider out, then you're maybe pivoting towards a follow me Calyrex Ice Rider endgame, where you only have to take one of those attacks and it's a bit more comfortable. But then at the same time, you know, we saw how much damage that Ogerpon did with the Sun Boost on Ivy Cudgel. It's possible that still would have been enough to KO the Calyrex, given how much damage it took.
Yeah, sort of a fun element of that game too is that both kind of handshaky their field effects there, where the Psychic Terrain that the Indeedee set up then being used against his teammates, and then in the very end, it was the drought that Torkoal set up that Ogerpon was happy to take advantage of as it knocked out these Pokemon and won the first game for its trainers. So I guess both trainers gonna have to think through like what Pokemon they really want to bring, because those field effects can help either side.
Behzad also showcasing that his Ogerpon and that Urshifu Rapid Strike had a bit more natural bulk, which is what ultimately led Justin and Chiliang Tang to victory in San Antonio. You know, those Pokemon weren't really as attack invested as they could be. And with that Ogerpon able to hold on, especially in that critical endgame situation, that really was what gave him the advantage. And now as we start game two, you have to wonder if that Ogerpon is maybe going to make a bit of an earlier appearance, but no, it's going to be that Urshifu and Lunala against the Smeargle and the Calyrex Ice Rider once again for Alejandro.
So I'll be really interested to see if the players opt to play this a similar way as they did before. I think both sides probably have things in this game they would like to correct. Last game that Lunala kind of walked into that imprison on the second turn, so maybe you make a different move there. I think there's a bunch of different options on this first turn as well. Really fun little situation here, and I don't know if we'll get to the situation that we were at the very end last time where maybe the Calyrex made a bad read, because I think we'll probably see a few different permutations before we get there.
For sure. I mean, that's the nice thing about best of three, though, is that you can't afford to make a couple of mistakes. You can't afford to feel your opponent's Pokemon out. You know, maybe are they as defensively invested as you think they are? Are they faster than you think they are? And I think for Alejandro, given how he seems to favor the same lines time and time again, being able to get that experience just tells him, okay, this is the one I need to follow. Now, here's a little bit of a difference, though. Fake out into the opposing Urshifu to break that focus task, stop it from attacking, and now Trick Room is activated. No taunt in play. This Smeargle now has options.
Yeah, it should be interesting. The trainers haven't really gotten to see a whole lot of Smeargle's speed stat, and even in the past matches, I don't know if there was a whole lot to learn, just because we saw it was quick in previous games, so not really how quick. So I'll be curious if the trainers know the order the Pokemon will act in and then how they adjust because of it. Kind of a very game one feeling game two now, without getting all the information revealed that maybe the trainers would prefer.
For sure. And I mean, the one thing that a lot of people like to do, especially when your strategy is keep Calyrex safe, is that if you know that you're slower than the Calyrex, you can try and boost its attacks via Decorate so that you have that extra damage going into this turn. I don't think the Smeargle wants to operate this way. It can at least redirect an attack away from that Calyrex Ice Rider, which will give it time to do something. But first, we're going to see a Terastallization on that Lunala, once again turning into a Water-type Pokemon, once again trying to resist the oppressive damage that Glacial Lance can put down on the board, and that's exactly what we see. It's going to connect with both of Behzad's Pokemon. It's going to do a little bit of damage to both the Pokemon. Gets a critical hit, but not necessarily very big. But the Lunala is slower than the Smeargle, which means now it moves first, and now Smeargle is knocked out before it can do anything.
Yeah, and there's no drought this time, so this Surging Strike is going to do a decent bit of damage.
For sure. It will get 3 hits on the Calyrex, and it will bring it down to just about half of its health. As it has not Terastallized yet, I think this is honestly a pretty decent trade. Alejandro will get the opportunity to bring something in now without taking damage, but you have to wonder what Pokemon he picks.
So it's Torkoal. So again, in some ways looking similar to last time. A little different deviation how we got here. The drought going to activate once again, and this time Torkoal gets to enter the battle at full health. That is a big difference, because now there is the option of just going the offense this Pokemon. The Eruption, the Terra Fire, and there is no Aqua Jet on this Urshifu, so not going to be a whole lot available to contest the Torkoal just swinging away.
That is one unfortunate thing about Urshifu, is that it really was pressured to drop Aqua Jet in favor of having Taunt, which works great when you're faster. However, in this board position, Behzad is either forced to maybe burn a turn, you can go for a detect to keep that Pokemon safe, but ultimately you are going to have to send something in to take a full health in the sun Terrifier Choice Specs Eruption. And it's not Miraidon numbers of damage, but that's still a lot of damage.
It's scary because there may be nothing on the team that can realistically survive the combination of these attacks, right? Again, this Lunala can't protect, so it's going to have to take a bunch of damage.
And Shadow Shield is broken as well, and Shadow Shield is one of those abilities that just is really cool when you have it active, but Behzad's team does not have ways to reactivate it, like we've seen with Rillaboom with leftovers on Terrapagos type teams earlier on. But here we go. There's that fire type terrestrialization. Torkoal is ready to do what it does best. It should move first if it's trained to be as slow as possible. It's gonna hit both of these Pokemon. It's gonna do some big damage, and it's able to take Indeedee out. Now this Glacial Lance is gonna be single target against that Lunala. It's below half of its health already.
It's gonna be close.
I don't think it's gonna be close. I think it's gonna be a KO. Oh no! It's able to hold on thanks to that terrestrialization. Expanding Force now will bring Torkoal down into the red, but it's able to take that Indeedee down, and I think that's a good step for Behzad in the direction towards winning this game.
It's very interesting, though, because with Alejandro here, the Torkoal looks pretty stylish with those choice specs, but being locked into Eruption at 15 HP is going to make it nearly useless until it switches out of battle. Even this greatly weakened Lunala might not be able to be knocked out by a single attack here. So some interesting situations, especially because we saw how much damage the Lunala did. Again, we're in a situation where if you could somehow get to a situation where it survives Trick Room and regains that speed advantage, it's definitely not just useless, and that is exactly what we see here as Lunala escapes, and we'll have to see, can its trainer keep it alive long enough to be able to come back out into battle?
Yeah, that Lunala just has a ton of natural bulk. Urshifu on the field in its place, gonna take this Eruption very comfortably thanks to its typing and thanks to how much damage that Torkoal has taken. But now Glacial Lance will also fail to pick up the KO on the Urshifu, on the Ogerpon. Sun boosted Ivy Cudgel connecting with that Calyrex Ice Rider for the KO for Behzad.
Oh, it's huge. Not only is that Lunala still in the back able to battle, but now this Torkoal can't switch out. It's going to be stuck using Eruption with so little HP for the rest of the game. This is basically a 3v1.
It is basically a 3v1. Maybe there could be a critical hit to get a couple more points of damage, but how much of a difference can that be? It's going to be down to the Hatterene. Admittedly, there is Psychic Terrain up on the field. However, both Ogerpon and the Urshifu have access to that Spiky Shield and that Detect. All Behzad has to do is find a way through the next couple turns of Trick Room to win the game.
Yeah, it's looking good there. I'd be interested to see if Eruption could pick up this knockout, but it probably doesn't even really matter, right? Even if it gets the chance to swing. The Speedor here, Expanding Force going to go into some protects, not much is going to happen, and time could be running out here for Alejandro.
It just goes to show how much having naturally bulky Pokemon can help you in these matchups where your opponent is able to consistently twist the dimensions, where they are able to bring out these heavy hitters time and time again.
And the twisted dimensions return to normal, so Hatterene's going to have to try to survive both of these attacks to get Trick Room back up before Lunala can come back out.
Well, at least the Surging Strikes will be weakened by the sunlight on the field. It does still get those 3 critical hits, though. But the big question is, how much damage will this sun-boosted Ivy Cudgel do? It connects with that Hatterene. It picks up the KO, and now it's just Torkoal standing in the way from Behzad getting his first ever regional championship victory. It will go for an Eruption. It's going to do some damage, but it's nowhere near enough.
They can't even finish out the Urshifu, and it's not even going to need the Lunala. We have a new regional champion.
We do. Behzad Muntazir showcasing the power of Lunala will be your 2025 Vancouver Regional Champion. And the crowd goes absolutely wild. Behzad mentioned earlier in an interview that he had some friends there out in the crowd, and just listen to them cheer. What an exciting finals match, and what a great opportunity to crown a new regional champion here this weekend.